Do you want to escape poverty? I'm not asking if you want a better life, to pay off your debts, or increase your income. I'm asking if you are truly willing to bury, once and for all, any and all possibilities of living with scarcity, financial, fear, or dependence. Because if you are, then you need to listen to what I'm about to tell you as if you were receiving a secret password. Because that's exactly what this video is. A code, a ritual, a master key that opens the doors to a new empire, and the most shocking thing is that this key is right in front of you, right now. That's what I said to Napoleon Hill when he sat down in front of me for the first time. He thought he was going to hear about investments, business, market strategies, but I said something much simpler, much more powerful. I said, if you do this today, poverty will end forever. And what is this? It is the absolute decision to become a man of definite purpose. A man who lives, acts, and builds based on a vision so clear and non-negotiable that everything else becomes secondary. When you adopt a purpose with such conviction that it becomes your new identity, poverty simply cannot survive. Because poverty is not the absence of money. Poverty is the absence of direction, of focus, of mastery. And maybe that's exactly where you are right now, lost, confused, working hard but reaping little, always starting and stopping, always motivated one day, unmotivated the next. That's not bad luck. That's a lack of dominant purpose. That's what needs to change now. So listen, choose today, with conviction, what you are going to build. And when I say build, I'm not just talking about business. I'm talking about reputation, results, routines. Choose what you will be unbeatable at. Become an expert, a master, an uncompromising builder of value. Because when you become valuable, the world pays. And it pays well. That's exactly how I beat poverty. It wasn't inheritance. It wasn't luck. It was an obsessive decision. I'm going to dominate the steel industry, and no one is going to stop me. That obsession became a ritual. That ritual became a system. That system became an empire. And if you're ready to end poverty, you need to do the same. Choose your arena. Establish your territory. Declare your mission. No more catchphrases, but visible actions. The world doesn't respond to wishes. The world responds to decisions. And that decision starts with radically cutting out what weakens you. Poverty feeds on distraction, on doubt, on hesitation. Do you want to beat it? Eliminate everything that steals your energy, your time, and your focus. Cut out the cycles that repeat themselves. Cut out the relationships that drain you. Cut out the habits that numb you, and replace them with discipline, reading, building, executing. Your mind needs to go into war mode. War against everything that has kept you small until now. That's what Napoleon Hill did. He left that conversation with me with his eyes on fire. Not because I promised him wealth, but because I revealed the map to him. A single act of profound clarity can redefine your entire trajectory. And here's the harsh truth. As long as you don't have a dominant purpose, you will be a slave to the purposes of others. You will work to make someone else rich. You will live, reacting. You will survive, not live. And poverty loves that. It feeds on those who live without direction. So today, your first duty is to write down your mission with your own hands. Define in one sentence who you will be, what you will deliver to the world, and how far you will go. Put it where you can see it every day. This is not symbolic. This is technical. This is how the mind aligns itself. This is how the brain enters a state of focused execution. After that comes the second fatal blow to poverty, the habit of relentless execution. Do you want to change your life? Then change your routine. Turn your mornings into moments of victory. Get up at the time you promised. Do what you planned. Keep your word to yourself. Because a man who does not keep his own schedule will never accomplish great things. Wealth begins at breakfast. It begins with the first step taken with discipline. It begins with the first no said to comfort. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a plan that you will execute to the end. And that brings me to the third truth that destroys poverty. You need goals with deadlines. You need goals that push you, that demand a new version of yourself, that force you to study more, act more, delegate better, cut out excesses. Poverty loves the comfort zone. It hides in someday, in when I can, in I'm getting ready, end that today. Choose an aggressive goal, a number, a date, a result, and make that goal public, so that shame will prevent you from backing down. So that pressure will push you forward on difficult days. Because there will be difficult days. And that's why the fourth point is non-negotiable. You need a strategic support network. I'm not talking about friends. I'm talking about allies. People who think big, who do more than they talk, who build, who demand, who inspire. You need to surround yourself with people who make you feel small, not by humiliating you, but by reminding you how much you can still grow. Your table defines your destiny. Change the conversations and you change the results. And here's a truth that many avoid. You may need to be alone for a while. You may need to isolate yourself from the mess to build something new. Don't be afraid of strategic solitude. It is the ground where great ideas germinate. It is where you hear your own voice, where you define your codes, where you draw your maps. Now, listen to this. You are one decision away from a new destination. A single choice, executed with discipline, can multiply your income, your influence, your impact. The problem is that most people wait for the perfect moment. But Carnegie didn't wait. Hill didn't wait. Rockefeller didn't wait. They created the perfect moment with massive action. Do it today, not tomorrow. Today. This is the time. This is the call. Do you feel that weight in your chest? That mixture of restlessness and the desire to explode with everything inside you? That is your conscience calling for action. It is your spirit screaming that it is tired of living below what you were born to be. And if you have listened to me this far, then you are ready for the next truth. Poverty is not overcome by effort alone. It is overcome with strategy. Effort is noble, but without direction, it becomes exhaustion. I have seen men working like beasts for decades and dying poor, and I have seen men who, with a handful of right moves, have created fortunes in less than 5 years. What is the difference? Strategy, right choices, intelligent allocation of energy, absolute clarity about where to put every minute, every dollar, every ounce of effort. You need to become a strategist in your own life. And that starts with absolute mastery of time. Poverty loves those who waste time. It loves those who are busy but unproductive. Those who spend their days responding to other people's demands but build nothing of their own. If you want to escape scarcity, you need to control your calendar like a CEO controls their budget. Every hour wasted is an opportunity for growth that you threw away. Every distraction tolerated is a thief who walked in through the front door. Schedule your victory. Plan your days with ruthlessness. Divide your time between building skills, direct execution, and market research. Eliminate the useless. Minimize the irrelevant. Become a rare time executor, because it is how you use your 24 hours that defines whether you will be rich or irrelevant. And here comes the second strategic weapon against poverty: absolute mastery of money. Most people want to earn more without learning how to multiply. They think the problem is income, when the problem is the system. It doesn't matter how much you earn. What matters is how much you retain, how much you invest, how much you reinvest in yourself. I saw people earning fortunes and losing everything because of a lack of structure. And I saw men with modest salaries building empires because of financial discipline. Do you want to end poverty? Start by controlling every penny. Write everything down. Categorize everything. Cut out what doesn't generate a return. Eliminate what is emotion disguised as a need. And more than that, reinvest in knowledge, in tools, in connections. Money should work harder than you do. But that only happens when you stop being its servant and become its master. Now listen to this as if your life depended on it. The man who conquers poverty is the one who builds sources of value, not just income. It's no use having a good salary. You need to have something that works while you sleep. A product, a solution, content, a company, a team. Something you can scale, automate, delegate. I built wealth by creating systems, hiring talent, selling predictable results. That's freedom. That's power. You can no longer trade hours for crumbs. You need to trade intelligence for leverage. But to do that, you need to give up the addiction to total control. Many poor people are poor because they want to do everything themselves. They are afraid to trust, to invest, to make mistakes. But wealth is born from delegation, from partnership, from collective building. Learn to build teams, to train people, to sell vision. And that vision needs to be documented. It needs to be visible. If your team doesn't know where they're going, they won't follow you. If you don't know where you're going, you'll go around in circles, and poverty will laugh at you. Now let's move on to what I consider the real turning point: using pain as fuel. Most people try to escape pain, but men who overcome scarcity turn pain into strategy. They take humiliation, exhaustion, exclusion and use it as fire in their eyes, pressure in their veins, steel in their bones. Pain is the raw material of uncompromising decision. Use it, amplify it, remember it every day. Carry it in your pocket as a reminder that you will never go back to that place. That's what Napoleon Hill understood when he started writing after talking to me. He wasn't motivated. He was hungry, angry at his limitations, hungry for purpose, thirsty for meaning. That creative fury drove him forward. And that's the fury you need to activate now. But fury without direction is destruction. So turn your anger into routine, your frustration into focus, your past into a platform. Now, you may be thinking, but Carnegie, I've tried before, I've failed, I've fallen, and I say to you, then you are more prepared than ever. The most dangerous men in the world are those who have failed and refused to stay down, because every fall taught them what a book could never teach. Every mistake shaped their instincts. Every humiliation strengthened their emotional muscles. You are not behind, you are ahead. And because of that, you now have everything you need. You have the pain, the vision, the system, the time, the energy, and you have a decision to make. Are you going to execute, or are you going to procrastinate once again? Because if you do it today, if you make that decision with total conviction, poverty ends. Not like magic, but as the inevitable consequence of a man who has decided never to live small again. Poverty only exists where there is permissiveness. And you need to hear this brutally, because no one else will tell you. You allowed yourself to be poor, maybe, not consciously, maybe not by direct choice, but you allowed it. You allowed small thoughts. You allowed limiting habits. You allowed toxic environments. You allowed relationships that undermine your strength. You allowed excuses, and above all, you allowed the postponement of your own greatness. But that permission can be revoked, right? Now, at this very moment, all it takes is a decision, an invisible signature made in the court of your conscience, sealing the following pact: I will never again live below my potential. I will never again accept mediocrity as normal. I will never again allow my mind, my body, or my money to be controlled by external forces. From now on, everything is subject to my command. This is the turning point. The moment when you stop asking life for permission and start taking possession of what was already yours by right, but was buried under layers of fear and distraction. And that command starts with your voice. Your voice, what you say every day, shapes your reality. Have you been listening to yourself? Have you been hearing the words you repeat? Because the man who says it's hard will never find the easy way. The one who repeats "it's not for me" will never give himself mental permission to prosper. Words are codes. Each one is an instruction. Every sentence you utter is an order that your brain tries to fulfill. So now, you're going to change your vocabulary, you're going to stop complaining. You're going to stop justifying yourself. You're going to stop repeating the decrees of poverty you inherited from your parents, your childhood, your culture. Starting today, your mouth will become the powerhouse of your wealth. You will say, I am abundance. I am discipline. I am wealth in the making. I am the architect of an invisible empire that is about to become inevitable. Say it until the world has no choice but to believe. But just saying it isn't enough, because the next layer is deeper. Your body needs to feel what your mouth declares. You need to walk like someone with a mission. Breathe like someone with mastery. Look like someone who has already decided to win. Posture is prophecy. The world treats you based on the energy you emanate. Poverty has a smell. Wealth has a presence. And you need to decide that your presence will convey power. Not arrogant power, but the quiet power of someone who is building something non-negotiable. The kind of presence that enters a room and changes the atmosphere. Not because it shouts, but because it exudes clarity. This comes from congruence. From the alignment between words, thoughts, and actions. Poverty lives where there is inconsistency, where people say one thing, think another, and do something completely different. But wealth loves integrity. It loves alignment. It loves internal unity. And that can be trained. Train yourself to be whole, to live what you preach, to keep your promises, especially to yourself. And here we come to one of the most overlooked aspects of wealth building: emotional self-control. Poverty is emotional. It is born of impulses, of reactivity, of decisions made in the heat of anger, fear, anxiety. The poor man is a slave to his own feelings. He buys to numb himself. He procrastinates to avoid discomfort. He runs away from difficult decisions. And so, time passes, the years fly by, and he remains in the same place. But the rich man, before being rich in his bank account, is rich in control. He masters what he feels. He does not react, he acts. He does not sabotage himself, he observes himself. He does not give in to the moment, he honors his purpose, and that is only possible with daily practice, meditation, writing, nightly review, moments of silence, moments of command. A general does not act on impulse. He observes the battlefield. He plans, he acts with precision. You need to become the general of your own life, and that requires you to deal with the past. Yes, now is the time to look back, head on. No victimhood, no guilt, just responsibility. Where did you go wrong? Where did you betray your greatness? Where did you allow yourself to become small? Write it down. Acknowledge it, honor the pain, and then burn it. Throw it away, break with it. Because, as long as you carry the emotional baggage of the past, you will have no internal space for new riches. The mind is a safe. It can only hold the essentials. And you need to empty it of anything that doesn't build you up, including people, because now we enter the most difficult part of this transformation. You will lose people along the way. Yes, you will lose friends. You will alienate family members. You will upset colleagues. You will be misunderstood, because the light you begin to emit bothers those who are in darkness by choice, and you can't expect them to understand you. You can't stop to explain. You can't dim your light to fit into other people's shadows. You have a mission, and that mission requires strategic solitude. And here's the beautiful part. Loneliness doesn't last forever. Soon, you attract new allies, men and women on the same wavelength, on the same mission, with the same code. And when that happens, a collective empire is born. The tribe of builders. The army of those who refuse to live as victims of the system. That system, my friend, is ready to be defeated. But not with shouting, with execution, with wealth, with construction. Do you want to escape poverty? Execute, every day, without fail, without excuses, Without breaks, you already understand that poverty is not just a financial condition, it is a system, a mental model, a set of habits, reactions, and permissions that repeat themselves day after day, year after year, generation after generation. It settles in like a virus, invisible, persistent, operating silently behind the scenes of decisions. And if you don't break this cycle with strength, awareness, and a system, you will remain a hostage even when you start earning more money. Now we're going to attack this system at its root. The strategic use of your vital energy. The first form of poverty is energy leakage. Men who wake up exhausted, even without physical exertion, who live mentally tired, emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually disconnected. Why? Because they don't know how to preserve, channel, and multiply their energy. And without energy, even the best plan falls apart. Without energy, even the best mentor becomes useless. Building wealth begins with protecting your vitality. You need to become a steward of your own energy. Sleep with intention. Eat with awareness. Train regularly. Breathe deeply. Be silent often. All of this is energy management, and that is what separates the tired worker from the tireless strategist. The rich man is intentional with every cell in his body, because he understands this body is the machine that carries the vision. If the machine breaks, the empire does not move. And now let's go further. Emotional mastery. Emotional poverty is the most devastating. It paralyzes, it makes people doubt themselves. It makes them reactive, explosive, needy for validation. And an emotionally poor person never leads with clarity. They sabotage themselves when they start to prosper. They hide when they should stand up. They procrastinate when they should act. If you are still guided by your mood, the weather, or other people, then you need to fight the real war now. The battle against reactivity. Train your mind like a warrior trains their body. Create pauses. Practice silence. Observe your impulses. Don't react, respond. With strategy, with constructive coolness. With awareness of impact. The builder's mind is a fortress, and every emotional outburst is a breach that weakens the pillars of the empire. And once you begin to master your internal state, you will see something fascinating. The external world will begin to reconfigure itself. Opportunities you didn't see before will now reveal themselves. Solutions that seemed unattainable will become obvious. Why? Because the wealth was always there. You just weren't aligned to access it. But don't stop there. There is an even more powerful element: mastery of language. The man who changes his vocabulary changes his reality. Words are not just communication. They are commands. They are operating systems that shape perception, behavior, and results. Notice how poor people talk. I can't. It's hard. We'll see. It's not just up to me. Now listen to the rich. It will be done. Let's solve it. What's the next step? How can I improve this? You are programming yourself with every sentence you utter. You are building or sabotaging your empire with every word you release into the air. Speak like a commander, like an architect, like an achiever. The world responds to those who declare with conviction, not to those who whisper with fear. And speaking of conviction, here's the truth that few accept. If you're still seeking acceptance, you're committed to poverty. The rich, the true builders, are always misunderstood at first. They speak forcefully, act with precision, and decide with autonomy. This bothers people. It destabilizes the weak. But it is precisely this attitude that transforms presence into influence. You are here to lead, not to please. Leadership requires unpopular choices, difficult decisions, strategic cuts. You need to decide if you want to be understood now or respected later. Because it is rarely possible to be both. And if you want to be truly respected, then it's time to decide where you stand in the world. Are you seen as an expert, as a reference, as someone who brings solutions? Or are you still mixed up, diluted, lost in the crowd of meaties? Your image communicates before your mouth opens. Your content reveals your consistency. Your posture conveys your clarity. Build authority. With consistency, with positioning, with continuous delivery of value. The man who repeatedly solves problems becomes inevitable. And the inevitable is paid, promoted, and sought after. But this requires overcoming yet another trap. The addiction to solitary control. You will not win alone. Never. That is a romantic and poor illusion. An empire requires a team. Delegation. Structure. You need people. You need talent. You need to learn how to build teams. To train leaders. To let go of what holds you back in operations and move toward strategy. Poor people do everything. Rich people build those who do. Poor people centralize. Rich people multiply. And multiplying requires trust, processes, metrics, feedback, culture, everything that seems complex at first, but becomes the greatest lever when well implemented, because a well-structured system produces wealth even on its worst days. You need that. Now, finally, understand what sabotages builders the most. Short-term distractions. The poor mindset thrives on immediate results. It needs to see a return today. And so it jumps from project to project, from idea to idea, without ever solidifying anything. But the man who builds thinks in decades. He tolerates planting. He honors cycles. He repeats the basics with excellence. Because he knows consistency is the new gold. You need a 5-year plan, a quarterly growth map, a weekly review system. This is not excessive. This is strategic survival. Without it, you go back to being reactive, running after things, begging for results. And you weren't born to beg, you were born to lead. But you will only lead if you live as someone who has already decided, I will never go back to scarcity. Have you noticed the difference it makes when the focus shifts from survival to building? This is the most drastic change a person can experience. Because suddenly, everything takes on new meaning. Decisions become calculated. Actions become intentional. Words become weapons. Minutes become blocks of power. The mindset shifts from response mode to direction mode. And here lies the essence that separates leaders from followers. Leaders know exactly where they want to go and they live as if they are already there. They don't wait for conditions to improve. They forge the conditions. They don't ask for space. They build their own ground. This is the philosophy of the architect. And you, if you've made it this far, can no longer behave like a worker. Are the architect of your new reality. But all architecture requires engineering, planning, structure, and above all, the most neglected of the pillars. Review. If you want to grow, you need to review. Every week, every goal, every action, every decision. You need to become your own auditor. Relentless, but fair. Cold, but constructive. What worked, what failed. Where was there dispersion? Where was there improvement? What will be eliminated? What will be reinforced? This weekly fine-tuning practice is what keeps you on course when the winds change. And the winds always change. That's why the man who builds wealth can't depend on motivation. He depends on a system. He doesn't wait to feel motivated to act. He acts because he has already decided, because his system doesn't allow emotional variation to interfere with progress. An empire is maintained by routines that work even when you're not at your best. And that ... is a luxury that poor men don't know, but now you know. And with that comes a new code. You need to learn to anticipate the game. The poor react, the rich anticipate. They anticipate crises. They anticipate trends. They anticipate behaviors. And they do so because they study, observe, analyze. They treat intelligence as an asset, and you should do the same. Every day, 30 minutes of reading, not as a hobby, but as part of your battle plan. Study the market, study biographies, study strategies, study mistakes, study victories. Your brain needs to be fed intellectual ammunition. Because when the war comes, and it will come, the winner will be the one who is most prepared, not the one who is most motivated. And to maintain that preparation, another code needs to be activated: the environment. Do you still underestimate the power of environment? Poverty loves messy, chaotic, disorganized, noisy environments. Wealth flourishes in clean, focused, organized, inspiring environments. Your office, your bedroom, your computer, your cell phone, everything communicates. Everything affects. Everything either propels or weakens. You need a performance sanctuary. A place where you walk in and feel that this is where you build your future. Proper lighting, purposeful objects, absence of noise, presence of visual strength. Everything designed to keep you in a state of maximum flow. And beyond the physical environment comes the human environment. And here you need to be brutal. Either your desk is a battlefield where generals plan the next expansion, or it's a coffee shop of lamentations where wounded soldiers complain about orders. Choose who you surround yourself with. And understand, this is not ego. This is preservation. Surrounding yourself with people greater than yourself is the most humble and strategic decision you can make. Because these men and women will pull you up not with words, but with example. They will make you think bigger, act with more precision, cut with more courage. But maybe you don't have access to these people yet, and that's okay. In that case, start with projection. Who are the 5 invisible mentors you will follow religiously for the next 6 months? Who are the authors, strategists, and executors who carry the codes you need? Choose them now. Create a system for daily intake of high-performance content, podcasts, books, videos, excerpts, every day, without exception. Because, while the poor are consuming distractions, you will be programming yourself to dominate. And that brings us to another vital point. You need to master your communication. It's no use having value if you don't know how to express it. It's no use having solutions if you don't know how to present them. There's no point in being good if no one understands what you deliver. You need to become a strategic communicator, emphatic, direct, powerful. The way you speak defines how the world sees you. Your intonation, your vocabulary, your rhythm, your posture. All of this is positioning. You can turn a common idea into an empire just by learning to sell it with conviction. Practice this every day. Talk to yourself. Record videos. Practice presentations. Refine your pitch. Improve your writing. Become an architect of words, because words build empires. And finally, understand this. The discipline you practice today is the freedom you enjoy tomorrow. Every no you say to comfort now is a yes to abundance later. Every difficult decision you make today is a new lever that pushes you years ahead in the future. You're not just building money, you're building a new way of being, a new mindset, a new generational cycle. Everything you are doing now will echo in you, in yours, in those who come after you. And that's why you can't stop, you can't hesitate, you can't back down. Because now, you know too much to go back to being small. You know what sets the men who make it here apart from those who disappear along the way. It's not talent, it's not luck, it's not opportunity, it's resilience. It's the ability to keep building even when the enthusiasm is gone, even when the results haven't shown up yet, even when no one is watching. The true builder doesn't depend on an audience. He depends on conviction. It is here, at this level, that you begin to be truly forged. Because, now, it's no longer about getting started. It's about sustaining. And sustaining is infinitely more challenging than starting. In the beginning, you're excited, full of energy. But in the middle of the build, it's silence, it's repetition, it's refinement. It's waking up early when everything is going wrong. It's redoing plans you swore were right. It's continuing to move the bricks of routine when the castle is still formless. And that requires an inner strength that few are willing to develop. Progressive resilience. Resilience that grows with the challenge, that adapts, reinvents itself, doesn't break, just reshapes itself. And that resilience is fueled by a principle that the weak reject: absolute responsibility. From now on, eliminate from your vocabulary any phrase that refers to external blame. Nothing is the government's fault, the market's fault, the crisis's fault, or the family's fault. The responsibility is yours. Because if it's not yours, you have no power to act. If it belongs to others, you become a hostage. But if it's yours, everything, absolutely everything, can be transformed. That is the lever. That is the key. Men who become giants are those who take responsibility even for what they did not do. Because they know it is in the field of control that the game of construction is played. They do not blame, they correct. They do not complain, they adjust. They do not accuse, they take responsibility. And by taking responsibility, they access the next level. Leadership of themselves. Self-leadership is the art of commanding yourself with the same firmness you would like to receive from a commander. You need to learn to hold yourself accountable with clarity, to reward yourself strategically, to discipline yourself wisely. Because, in the end, no one will come to save you. No mentor can force you. No video can transform you. Only you, with repeated decisions, can forge this new structure. And one of the most powerful decisions is to shield your focus. Focus is not a gift, it is a construct. It is an environment. It is a choice renewed every second. The world will try to steal it from you every day with notifications, comparisons, false urgencies, other people's demands. And if you don't create a mental shielding system, you will be swallowed up by distraction like everyone else. Create blocks of deep execution. Create inviolable schedules. Create rituals for the beginning and end of each cycle. Make your productivity sacred, because every hour well spent brings you years closer to your goal. Every uncontrolled interruption throws you back. And that brings us to the next principle. A man who wants to escape poverty needs a scalable financial plan. Stop thinking only about paying bills. Start thinking about multiplying capital, about creating assets, about generating continuous flow, about building invisible wealth that reveals itself over time. You need to learn to separate what is a cost of survival from what is an investment in expansion. Every dollar that comes into your life needs to have a name, a function, and a destination. Not a single penny can be spent without a strategy. Because what you do with little is exactly what you will do with a lot. If you waste $100, you will waste $100,000. Poverty loves waste. Wealth requires intelligence, and part of that intelligence is knowing where to put your money, in knowledge, in tools, in scale, in people. You only scale when you invest. You only invest with awareness. Only those who are financially educated are aware. And that education will not come from the system. It will come from your thirst for knowledge. That's why your routine needs to include reading about investments. It needs to include conversations about wealth. It needs to include mentoring on expansion. Stop running away from money. Start mastering money. It needs to be your servant, not your master. And now, listen carefully. Even with all this, there will be dark days when you will doubt. Days when nothing will make sense. Days when everything will seem distant. And it is on those days that you must access what few have: strategic faith. Faith, not as blind belief, but as a deep conviction that invisible construction is already happening. You don't see what's germinating under the ground. But you keep watering, keep caring, keep nurturing, because you know the harvest will come. Faith is continuous action despite the absence of immediate results. Faith is conscious repetition when emotion wants to give up. And that requires a ritual. Every day, before going to sleep, review your mission, read your purpose statement, remember the whys, rewrite your goals, realign your direction. What is reviewed daily becomes non-negotiable. What is neglected dissolves into routine. You are planting a life that will be abundant for decades. But only if you don't stop. Only if you don't back down. Only if you keep going. Even when no one else is watching. Are you still breathing? Good, because now, in this last stretch, is when the weak give up and the future billionaires reveal themselves. This is where builders are tempered by the heat of continuous commitment, where endurance becomes habit and action becomes identity. Because, at this point in the journey, it's no longer about motivation or technique. It's about legacy. And legacy isn't what you leave behind when you die, it's what you build while you live, with such an impact that even when you're silent, your name continues to speak. And that legacy building starts now, with the decision to become a problem solver at scale. Do you want to be rich? Become necessary. Become indispensable. Become a solver of real pain. Wealth pursues those who specialize in solving what others avoid. A $10,000 problem requires vision. A $100,000 problem requires strategy. $1 million problem requires structure, team, leadership, scale. What problem do you solve today that justifies the wealth you desire? Because the market doesn't care about your effort. It pays for relevance, for impact, for clarity. The world is thirsty for those who deliver consistently, for those who anticipate solutions, for those who execute without excuses. And that's why you need to enter a state of continuous construction. There is no finish line. There is no endpoint. There is constant evolution. Because, as you grow, the challenges change names, but they don't disappear. And if you stop, everything you've built begins to crumble. An empire cannot survive in stagnation. It needs to advance. An advancement requires you to reinvent your identity at each new level. You started this journey with one focus: to escape poverty, but now that's not enough. Now you want to become a reference, a pillar, a role model, a builder of other builders. And that requires you to lead by example. Your habits must communicate more than your words. Your routine must speak louder than your promises. Your presence must solve more than your absence questions. And, to sustain that, you need a spiritual foundation, not religious. Spiritual, you need a connection to something greater than yourself, to a purpose that transcends the material. Because there will be days when money won't be enough to justify the effort. Days when logic won't explain the pain. Days when only the deep conviction that you've been called to something greater will keep you going. This practical spirituality manifests itself in silence, in conscious gratitude, in service to others, in strategic generosity, in the understanding that you are building not just a rich life, but a life that makes others live better. And that's where the cycle is complete. When you start using your wealth as seed, not as a trophy. Poverty is cumulative. It gathers the little with fear. True wealth is distributive. It spreads with purpose. And the more you give strategically, the more you receive in abundance. That's what I discovered when I decided to give away most of my fortune. Because I understood that your legacy is not in what you own. It's in what you spread. And that's why now comes the most important question of all. Who will be impacted by your decision today? Think about the faces, the names, the generations, those who will come after you, those who will never have to go through what you have gone through. Because you decided to change. Because you decided to build. Because you decided to be the disruption, the beginning, the new cycle. Because now you know. Now you carry codes. Now you have the tools. Now you have the map. And because of that, you can no longer claim ignorance. All that remains is action. And if this transformation has touched you, if you felt something different pulsing in your chests, then you already know what to do. Share this message. Multiply this seed. Because there are thousands out there still, asleep, waiting for the exact awakening you have just experienced. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. And join the new generation of those who no longer ask permission to thrive. Those who build. Those who lead. Those who live as owners, not hostages, because today, you became one of them.